Today,
Right.
we are with Harun Maruf and Joseph. They both wrote an amazing book that I highly recommend. Is Inside Al-Shabaab. And we are going to talk about Al-Shabaab, their presence today in Africa, their power, their future. Thank you for joining us.
You're most welcome.
So let's start from the criminal pattern of Al-Shabaab. They are powerful. They are in control of a huge part of Somalia. What are their skills?
Their criminal skills, so to speak. They, since their beginning, Al-Shabaab has relied on various criminal activities to fund their bombing campaigns and their military campaigns. They used to take a cut of money from the Somali pirates. They used to get tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, from pirates. Would hijack a ship, and then when they got the ransom, Al-Shabaab would take a cut of that. And they kidnapped people over the years and gotten ransom money. They were accused of ivory trafficking at one point, although I think that was debunked. I don't think that actually turned out to be true, or if it was a very small amount of money. Their main methods of getting funds now are extorting businessmen and taxation schemes or checkpoints where they trap truckers transporting goods around Somalia. In the extortion schemes, it's almost like a mafia scheme. They put pressure on a businessman or businesswoman, and it can be in Mogadishu or any part of the country, and it's a protection racket. If you don't pay up, you will get bombed, you will get kidnapped, you will get killed. And they raise millions of dollars doing that. They also tax truckers and just ordinary people traveling through the interior of Somalia. They don't control the cities anymore, so they can't touch the vehicles there. But when a trucker is hauling cargo, say to Baidoa or to the lower Shabelle region, there are checkpoints that they have to pass. And Al-Shabaab gunmen will greet them at these checkpoints and say, you have to pay X $100 if you want to pass. I remember the rates, I think a few years ago, were $300 for a truck and $900 for the cargo, depending on the size of the shipment. And according to various estimates, they raised $10 million in 1 year at one checkpoint this way. They have certainly raised tens of millions of dollars a year through these schemes. I don't think anyone has an exact estimate these days, but it's certainly more than enough to keep the insurgency going now for more than a decade. And they pay their fighters, and they have enough money to operate and mount a strong movement against the Somali government.
What about the trafficking, in your opinion? Because we have the Swahili route not far away. So do you think that they can be interested in it and they're planning to manage the trafficking too, or is outside their control?
They have never taken much of an interest in drug trafficking. They ban the narcotic khat in the regions that they control, and one gets the sense that drugs are almost it's sort of outside their moral code. They to the extent that they have a moral code. Well, I mean, they're strict Islamists, and well, they don't mind killing lots of people, even killing lots of Muslims, but it seems to be a verboten thing to make money using drugs, and so they've never gotten involved in that.
Piracy, in your opinion, is still important, or is just something of the past, belonging to the past?
Piracy?
Yeah.
Well, the pirates, the Al-Shabaab was never involved in hijacking ships directly. There were gangs on the coast of Somalia that would hijack the ships, and Al-Shabaab would take a 10%, a 20% cut, for allowing these gangs to operate from their territory or near their territory. when the pirates were put out of business by the Navy patrols and the armed guards on the ships, that source of income dried up for Al-Shabaab. So that at one point they might have made, I remember reading they made a $600,000 strike on from one ship. I think a Saudi oil tanker had been hijacked and ransomed, and Al-Shabaab got 600,000 for it. But since probably 2012, the money from that has been negligible.
They have a very professional military strategy. They were able to shut down a US drone. So it means that they're really very good. What about their technique? They use a guerrilla technique. They have training camps. I mean, they are well structured, or it's just, I mean, an amateur?
They are very well structured. They are unusually well structured for what you consider a terrorist group or a militant group. They've actually always had a governing strategy. They're not like Boko Haram, just going in and killing people and ruling strictly through fear. They actually set up governments or a form of governance, let's put it that way. And they've always had training camps for their recruits. And they they channel people into either their regular army, sort of foot soldiers, or their more specialized units for suicide missions or spying or things like that. At one point, 2009, 10, 11, they almost ran a fairly conventional type army. They fought pitched battles against first the Ethiopians and then AMISOM and the transitional federal government. And they reached the limits of their power doing that because they never had tanks or airplanes or armored personnel carriers. And so I think that was one of the reasons they lost battles when they tried to fight against actual armies. Since about 2012, 2013, they have fought much more of a guerrilla type insurgency with more suicide bombings on soft targets like hotels and restaurants, attacking malls, obviously in Kenya, and now it's been a long time since they have fought a real field battle against either AMISOM or the Somali army. That said, they still have a lot of military power, and they can, as they show periodically, they can carry out major bomb strikes that kill dozens of people.
Just to add on that, if I might add one point, they did not so far shot down any US drone, but some US drone is probably crashed for some other reason, maybe for technical reasons. But what Al-Shabaab lately has been relying on heavily was to carry out these high-profile complex attacks on heavily fortified military bases where they kill a lot, and then primarily where they also confiscate and loot a lot of ammunition, a lot of weapons. But Al-Shabaab has been using IEDs, improvised explosive devices, quite a lot to target military vehicles traveling from one town to another. And they've been carrying out hit-and-run attacks for a while. Lately, these attacks have decreased. The level of attacks have decreased. We don't know whether that is because they're changing strategy or because of the US drones, because there are a lot of drones in the skies in Somalia. And these drones have really significantly impacted on their operations and what they can do, whether it's smuggling vehicles carrying explosives into the urban cities, also whether they can bring a lot of men into one place, because that's very dangerous strategy for them to bring a lot of militias, a lot of men into one place. Because whenever that happened, US drones have targeted and killed a significant number of them. So they know that, and they now disperse their militias, and the attacks they have been carrying out were largely hit and run attacks and IEDs.
In the last months, we are seeing in Mozambique another group with the same name, Al-Shabaab. They are jihadists. Can you confirm that they have nothing to do with Al-Shabaab, Somalian Al-Shabaab? But the question is, the same name, the same violence, does it mean that Al-Shabaab was able to set up a brand, a criminal brand, a terrorist brand, able to spread all around Africa?
It's still very early to verify whether there is real connection between Al-Shabaab in Somalia and the groups in northern Mozambique, Cabo Delgado. They have the same name. They actually call themselves another name, Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but the locals identified them and called them as Al-Shabaab. So that is a popular name that locals gave them. They don't necessarily call themselves as Al-Shabaab. Nonetheless, there is no verified information that they have links. What is possible is that Al-Shabaab may have inspired them because of the local grievances, lack of jobs, exploitation of local resources, brutal treatment of locals by the military. These are the types of behavior and activities that always play into the minds of extremists. These are the issues they usually exploit, especially youth, and they can easily associate their suffering with the kind of treatment they're going through. And this is how militants largely, wherever they are in the world, that's how they recruit. So it's possible that Al-Shabaab inspired this group, or even ISIS inspired this group. But so far, what we know, based on the videos and messages from this group in northern Mozambique, is that they are identifying themselves as allied with ISIS, and ISIS and Al-Shabaab are from the same ideological brand, but they have been hostile to each other recently. Since ISIS tried to take over Al-Shabaab, Al-Shabaab resisted. There have been fighting in Somalia between Al-Shabaab and ISIS. That fighting is still going on. So Al-Shabaab was very, very, very hostile to the emergence of ISIS in Somalia, and I don't think they might not have that direct collaboration with this group in northern Mozambique. What's also possible is that long time ago, members of Al-Qaeda who had connections with Al-Shabaab were traveling between East Africa and Southern Africa. It's possible that some of those members might have traveled through this region in Mozambique, but that needs to be substantiated.
Let's move now to the women working inside Al-Shabaab. Women are important. They have strategic roles, in your opinion, even as a spy. Espionage is very important for Al-Shabaab, isn't it? And so what is the role of women and how they act inside the organization?
That's a very good question. Al-Shabaab claims that they don't put women in the battleground, in the front lines. But that statement is not correct. Al-Shabaab have used women in attacks, in suicide attacks. One of the former late Somali Minister of Interior in 2011 was killed by a suicide bomber who was a woman. In 2013, an explosion occurred in Mogadishu's National Theater, and it's believed the person who carried out that explosion was a female. We also know that one of the attackers in a hotel in Mogadishu called Central was also a female suicide bomber. So Al-Shabaab have used females as suicide bombers. But we believe that the most important job that female collaborators or female members of Al-Shabaab do for the group is to collect information, because they can travel from one place to another very easily without attracting any suspicion from the security forces. We believe they collect a lot of information. We believe also they raise a lot of funds. In Al-Shabaab areas, there are groups of organized women who raise funds. And if you know what was happening in Somalia in the last 30 years is that women became the main breadwinners of all families in Somalia because of the kind of jobs that were available, which is bringing in goods, sugar, clothes from the Middle East, from India, from China, and to sell. And these are the kind of jobs that women are involved in. I'm not saying all Somali women are involved and collaborating with Al-Shabaab. Certainly, that's not the case. There's a very small portion of women with Al-Shabaab who exploit this kind of activities, and they target women who are involved in businesses. And exactly the same way Al-Shabaab extorts money from businesses in Mogadishu, these women reach out to females. They are very organized and they have got grassroots groups, and they raise funds. So they do support Al-Shabaab with finances and with information, and sometimes in smuggling weapons into major towns, such as bombs, IEDs, and even AK-47.
Let's finish talking about the future of Al-Shabaab. They are powerful, they are competent. I mean, they just set up a COVID center. So it seems that they're really able to impose themselves over the government. So what do you think is going to happen in the future? If I'm not wrong, the talk between Somalia and Somaliland were stopped. So we lose a chance to create peace in the country. So what do you feel? What's going to happen? Al-Shabaab will become the big threat for Africa, or Somalia will be just their place of activities?
It's hard to see Al-Shabaab becoming a major threat to Africa. But they are going to remain active, I believe, certainly in Somalia, certainly in Kenya. You never know about neighboring countries such as Ethiopia or Djibouti. You know, there's a major U.S. base in Djibouti, and Al-Shabaab did attack a base where some U.S. troops were stationed in Kenya. I don't think they have the strength or the connections to go beyond East Africa, at least not now. It does depend a lot on what happens with Somalia over the next year, and whether AMISOM, the African Union mission there, whether or not they pull out the troops as they've threatened to do. That AMISOM has been keeping Al-Shabaab at bay for more than a decade. If AMISOM were to pull out the troops, that would leave the Somali federal government in a very weak position. And that could pave the way. I'm not saying it will, I'm saying it could pave the way for Al-Shabaab to exert greater control in Somalia, and maybe even set up a central type government. Harun, you want to take it from there?
Yeah, the Al-Shabaab for over the past 12, 13 years, they have been trying to overthrow the government, but so far they have not succeeded to overthrow the government. And it's very unlikely they will overthrow the government as long as there is international support for Somalia from African Union, from other partner countries. But the pressure is on the Somali government to train a new army that can take responsibility of the security from the international community, that can defend the country from Al-Shabaab, against Al-Shabaab. So that's what is expected from Somalia. Al-Shabaab is already carrying out attacks in Kenya. They have already attacked Djibouti. They attacked Uganda. If they get the chance to attack another country, they will probably take it. But primarily the focus of their attack is Somalia and northern Kenya. And Al-Shabaab only needs one successful attack in the region, somewhere in the region, to cause havoc, to change dynamics. This is a guerrilla group, this is a terrorist group. They only need one major attack like Westgate, or another attack in Nairobi last year in Dusit Hotel complex. If they carry out those kind of attacks, of course they can claim to be active and alive and in Somalia, and in the region, and to be defending, as they call themselves, or trying to create an emirate in that part of the world. But Al-Shabaab is defeatable. They can be defeated. We have seen that before. Somali government and the African Union have taken over a lot of towns from Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab were kicked out of all the major towns. They are in the countryside. With the determination, with the establishment of Somali forces, Al-Shabaab can be defeated. But you need the political will, you need the investment of the security forces, and you need a rigorous, determined Somali government in order to achieve that.
Do you think that the presence of Turkey inside Somalia can be an obstacle or could help?
No, on the contrary, the presence of Turkey has been very helpful to Somalia. Turkey set up a major training facility in Somalia. It's training thousands of Somali army. It's the only sophisticated modern military training facility in Somalia now. Turkey is also giving budget support to Somali government. Turkey has been helping Somalia rebuild some of the infrastructure, roads, buildings in the capital. Turkey has also been helping Somalia with humanitarian support. So Turkey has been the most successful story we have seen over the last decade in terms of support for Somalia from anywhere in the world. So that experiment by Turkey in Somalia has been very successful, and Somalis recognize that. What Turkey wants to do is, because Somali forces were trained in different countries, in Ethiopia, in Djibouti, in Uganda, some of them were trained by the United States. Turkey wants to help Somalia harmonize the different trainings by all these different unities of the Somali soldiers, so Somalia can have one viable, strong army.
Thank you so much, Harun. Thank you, Dan, for joining us.